You know what fascinates me about being 60 with nothing saved for retirement? It's not the panic. It's not even the regret. It's the fact that one of the most important chapters of your life is staring right at you, and somehow the world has convinced you that the story is already over before you've even turned the page. Like the ending was decided years ago, and now all that's left is to accept it. By the way, if you're finding this helpful, the subscribe button lives right down there, and I promise I only make videos worth watching. The real question isn't whether you've saved enough by 60. It's whether you can build a life that works from where you actually stand today. Because here's the thing. Most people walk into their 60s carrying a number in their head, a number someone told them they should have saved by now. Maybe it was a financial advisor, maybe it was a magazine article, maybe it was a friend who couldn't stop bragging about their portfolio at dinner, and when they look at their own account, that number feels like a verdict. Guilty, behind, too late. And so they shut down, they stop planning, they stop hoping, they start telling themselves stories about working until they drop, about never affording rest, about being the cautionary tale their grandkids whisper about one day. But what if I told you that story is wrong? Not just wrong, but built on a measuring stick that was never designed for your life in the first place. Let me explain what I mean. For decades, the retirement industry has trained everyone to focus on one thing, the account balance, the big number, the pile of money sitting in a 401k or an IRA. And if that pile isn't big enough, you're behind. End of story. But that framework leaves out the most important part of retirement, the part that actually determines whether you'll be okay. And that part is income. Not savings, not balances, not piles. Income. Money that shows up every month, reliably, predictably, whether the market is up or down, whether you feel good that day or not, whether the economy is booming or bleeding. Think of it this way. Your income floor is like the foundation of your house. Strong, underground, invisible, but holding everything up. Your savings? That's more like the furniture. Nice to have, comfortable, but it sits on top of something else. Most people focus on decorating the furniture while ignoring whether the foundation is solid. And here's the truth nobody told you. At 60, with no savings, you can still build a remarkably strong foundation. You just have to stop measuring yourself with the wrong ruler. Let me show you what I mean with two people. Let's meet two people. The first one, let's call him Frank. Frank is 67. He spent over 3 decades working a steady, dependable job. Nothing flashy, no big windfalls, just consistency. If you saw him walking down the street, you wouldn't think, there goes someone financially secure. You might actually think the opposite. Frank lives in a modest home. He drives an older car. And if you looked strictly at his savings, you'd probably panic for him, because Frank has around $14,000 saved, not $140,000, just 14. By the standards you've been taught, Frank is a disaster. But here's what you don't see when you only look at that number. Frank gets a Social Security check every month. He worked at a job that gave him a small pension, modest, but consistent. His home is paid off. His car is paid off. He has no credit card debt. Every single month, without touching a savings account, money shows up, consistently, predictably, and that money covers his life. Frank is not struggling. Frank is not stressed. Frank is living a life that works. Now let's meet Gary. Gary did everything right, at least according to the rules he was given. He saved aggressively in his 20s, his 30s, his 40s. He invested diligently. He followed every benchmark the industry threw at him. And today, Gary has $800,000 saved. On paper, Gary is a success story, the kind of person magazines write about. But Gary doesn't feel like one. Gary still has a mortgage. Gary doesn't have a pension. Gary relies heavily on his investment account to fund his life. Every market dip feels personal. Every news headline about a recession sends him spiraling. Gary has more money than Frank, but less peace. Gary has the bigger pile, but Frank has the stronger foundation. It's not about who has more saved, it's about who has more certainty. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that's nice for Frank, but I'm not Frank. I don't have a pension. I'm 60 with nothing. How does this apply to me? Stay with me, because this is where it gets real. Here's a question. If you had to choose between more money or more certainty, which would it be? Keep that in your head as we go, because the entire system has been training you to chase money when what you actually need is certainty. And certainty at 60 doesn't come from a magic pile of savings appearing overnight. It comes from understanding the assets you already have, even if you don't see them yet. Let me talk about the biggest one, Social Security. There's a quiet lie sitting at the center of how most people think about Social Security. The lie is that it's not enough, that it's a backup, that it's something extra on top of your real retirement. But for someone at 60 with no savings, Social Security isn't extra. It's the foundation, and the choices you make about when to claim it will shape the rest of your life more than almost anything else you do in the next decade. Think of your benefit like a faucet. Behind that faucet is a pipe, one you've been filling your entire working life. Every paycheck, every tax contribution, it all builds pressure in that pipe. Now here's how it works. The longer you wait to turn the faucet on, the stronger the pressure becomes. Wait until 70, the flow is powerful. Turn it on at 62, the flow is lighter. But here's the part most people don't think about. That faucet belongs to you. You paid into it, you earned it. And the question of when to turn it on is one of the most important financial decisions you'll ever make. For someone at 60 with no savings, this decision matters even more. Because if you claim at 62, you're locking in a permanently smaller check for the rest of your life. That check has to cover your rent, your groceries, your healthcare, your everything. If you can wait until 67, your full retirement age, that check could be roughly 30% larger. And if you can stretch it to 70, you could be looking at a check that's 70-some% larger than what you would have gotten at 62. Same person, same work history, wildly different income for the rest of your life. That's not a small decision, that's the decision. Now, I'm not telling you what to choose, because the right answer depends on your health, your work situation, your family history, your living costs. The real question isn't what's the best age, it's what's the best decision for your life right now. But if you're at 60 with no savings and you're physically able to keep working in some form, even part-time, even something flexible, every year you delay claiming is like giving yourself a permanent raise, a raise the system can't take away, a raise that grows with inflation through cost of living adjustments, a raise that follows you for the rest of your life. And speaking of inflation, this is the invisible asset most people miss. Social Security adjusts, slowly, imperfectly, but it adjusts. Most pensions don't. Most savings accounts don't unless you actively manage them. Inflation quietly erodes everything that doesn't move with it. It's the silent pressure that creeps into every grocery bill, every utility statement, every gas pump. It silently erodes the buying power of every dollar you don't protect. And Social Security, for all its flaws, has a built-in mechanism to push back against that pressure. That's worth more than most people realize. Before we go further, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, this would be a really good time to do it. I've got a lot more of these waiting for you. Now let's talk about the other thing you have working in your favor at 60, even if you feel like you have nothing: time. Not as much time as a 30-year-old, but more time than you think. If you start claiming Social Security at 67, that's still 7 years from now. 7 years is a long time. 7 years can change everything. 7 years of intentional choices can transform your entire retirement. Imagine walking onto a car lot. Every vehicle has a sticker price: bold, official, intimidating. It looks final, non-negotiable. But if you've ever bought a car, you already know the truth. Nobody pays the sticker. There are hidden discounts, dealer incentives, timing advantages, negotiation room. The real price is almost always lower, but the sticker exists to anchor your expectations, to make you feel like anything below it is a failure. Now take that exact same system and apply it to retirement. That $1.5 million number you've seen in every article, that's your sticker price. It was designed to make you feel behind. It was designed to anchor your expectations to something most people will never reach. And the dirty secret of the retirement industry is that the actual price of a working retirement is often dramatically lower than that sticker, especially if you build it around income instead of a giant pile. So what do you do with these 7 years? What do you do with this gift of time that doesn't feel like a gift? You use it to build the foundation. The first thing is brutally simple. You keep earning. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. You probably hoped I was going to tell you about some secret investment that turns nothing into millions. I'm not, because the truth is, the most powerful retirement tool available to someone at 60 with no savings is the ability to keep earning a little longer. Every dollar you earn in your 60s does 3 things at once. It pays for your current life so you don't dip into anything else. It potentially increases your future Social Security benefit if you're still adding to your top earning years. And it delays the day you need to start drawing down resources, which means everything you do build has more time to work for you. I want you to imagine your retirement in 2 parts, not one big number, 2 distinct piles. Pile 1, income that shows up no matter what. This includes things like Social Security, any pension you might have, any rental income, even a small part-time job in retirement. Money that continues whether the market is up or down. Pile 2, your savings, your investments, your accounts. Now, here's the critical mistake most people make. They focus almost entirely on Pile 2 while barely acknowledging Pile 1. And yet, Pile 1 is often doing far more heavy lifting than people realize. For someone at 60 with no savings, Pile 1 is everything. Pile 1 is your survival. Pile 1 is your dignity. Pile 1 is your peace. So how do you grow Pile 1? You delay Social Security as long as you reasonably can. You consider taking on a phased work approach, maybe full-time for a few more years, then part-time after that. You look at your skills, your network, your hobbies, and you ask, what could earn me even a little bit of money in my late 60s? Not a fortune, just a little. Because a little, multiplied over years, compounded with delayed Social Security, becomes a lot. Let me ask you something. Do you know what your monthly income will actually look like when you retire? Be honest with yourself. Most people never sit down and do this math. They have a vague feeling, they have a worry, they have an anxiety, but they don't have a number. And without a number, you can't plan. You can only panic. So let's do the math. Or at least, let's talk about how to do it. Step 1 is figuring out your Social Security estimate. You can do this on the Social Security Administration's website. They used to have a calculator that let you play with different claiming ages and see different outcomes. They actually had to change that tool because people were misusing it, getting confused, making bad decisions based on numbers they didn't fully understand. But the basic estimate is still available, and it will give you a real number you can work with. Not a guess, not a hope, a number. Step 2 is figuring out your actual expenses, not your salary minus your savings, your actual life. What do you spend on housing, on food, on transportation, on healthcare, on insurance, on the small joys that make life feel like a life and not just a survival exercise? Most people underestimate this by a lot. They forget about car repairs, dental work, gifts for grandkids, the occasional flight to see family. So when they finally retire, the numbers don't add up and they're blindsided. Step 3 is finding the gap, the space between what you expect to earn and what you actually need to spend. That gap is the problem to solve, not $1 million pile, just that gap. And here's where things get interesting, because for many people at 60 with no savings, the gap is much smaller than they fear once they account for paid-off debts, smaller housing if they downsize, and Social Security at the right claiming age. What do you think? Are most people actually behind on retirement, or are they just measuring it wrong? Because I'll tell you what I see over and over again. People who are doing way better than they think, but who feel like failures because the industry trained them to look at the wrong number. Now let's talk about something nobody likes to bring up, but everyone needs to think about. Sequence of returns risk. I know it sounds technical. Stay with me. Sequence of returns risk is just a fancy way of saying that when you retire matters as much as how much you have. Because if you retire right before a big market downturn and you're pulling money out of investments while they're falling in value, you can do permanent damage to your retirement. The same portfolio that would have lasted 30 years in good times can run out in 15 if the market hits you wrong at the start. This is why income-focused retirement is so powerful. Because if your foundation is built on guaranteed income, not market performance, you don't have to worry about timing. You don't have to pull money out of falling investments. You just live. The market does its thing, and your life keeps moving forward. For someone at 60 with no savings, this is actually a hidden advantage. You don't have a portfolio to mismanage. You don't have years of growth to lose. Your job over the next decade isn't to outperform the market. It's to build a floor of guaranteed income that the market can't touch. And that's a fundamentally different game, a simpler game, a game you can actually win. Let me throw in another consideration that gets overlooked all the time. If you're married, the decisions you make about Social Security don't just affect you, they affect your spouse. Because when one partner passes away, the surviving spouse keeps the larger of the two Social Security checks. That's it. The smaller one goes away. So if you're the higher earner and you claim early, locking in a smaller check forever, you're not just shrinking your own retirement, you're shrinking your spouse's protection for the years after you're gone. That's a heavy thing to think about, but it's also one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. Here's a question for the married folks. Have you and your spouse ever actually talked about what happens if one of you is gone? Most couples never do. It feels morbid. It feels uncomfortable. But it's one of the most loving conversations you can have, because the decisions you make today about claiming ages, about working a little longer, about delaying benefits, ripple through your spouse's life long after you're gone. That's not pressure, that's purpose. Now, I want to come back to the emotional weight of this, because I know this isn't just math for you. I know it isn't just spreadsheets and strategies. When you're 60 and you look at an empty account, what you feel isn't just worry, it's something deeper. Shame maybe, regret, the voice that says you should have started earlier, you should have known better, you should have saved more in your 40s when you had the chance. You should. I want you to let go of that voice. Not because the past doesn't matter, but because it can't be changed. And every minute you spend punishing yourself for what you didn't do 20 years ago is a minute you're not using to build what's possible now. There's a quiet fear that creeps in for a lot of people as retirement gets closer. It doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it shows up as a simple question: did I do enough? And when the answer feels like no, people freeze. They stop opening statements. They stop having conversations. They pretend the problem doesn't exist because facing it feels too painful. I want to ask you something personal. Have you ever avoided opening your retirement statements because you were afraid of what you'd see? If yes, you are not alone. So many people do this. They build entire emotional walls around their finances because the unknown feels safer than the truth. But here's what I want you to understand. The truth, even if it's hard, is always better than the unknown, because the truth gives you something to work with. The unknown gives you nothing but anxiety. You are not behind. In fact, you may already be standing on one of the strongest financial foundations available today. You just can't see it yet because you've been trained to look at the wrong things. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. You have a clean slate. You have the ability to design a retirement around income, not investments. You have time, even if it doesn't feel like much. You have decisions still left to make, and every decision you make from here forward can move you closer to peace. Here's something to think about. If you found out today that you're actually on track, how would that change your week? How would it change your sleep? How would it change the way you walk into a room? Because so many people are walking around carrying fear that doesn't belong to them. Fear that was placed on their shoulders by an industry that profits from making them feel behind. The fear isn't yours. The shame isn't yours. The verdict isn't yours. You get to write this next chapter. Quick pause. If you're new here, hit subscribe. I've got a lot more of these waiting for you. Let me give you something practical, something you can actually do this week. Here's what I want you to do. First, figure out your income floor. What money is coming in every month, no matter what? Social Security estimate, any small pension, anything stable and predictable. That number matters more than you've been told. Second, calculate your real expenses, not based on your current salary, based on your actual life. Housing, food, healthcare, transportation, the things you truly care about. Because retirement isn't about replacing income, it's about supporting your lifestyle. Third, find the gap. What's the difference between your income and your expenses? That gap is what your strategy needs to cover, not $1 million pile, not some generic benchmark, just the gap. And then fourth, get serious about closing that gap with the time you have left. Maybe that means working an extra 3 or 4 years. Maybe it means picking up a side income that fits your skills. Maybe it means downsizing your home so your monthly expenses drop dramatically. Maybe it's some combination of all three. Whatever it is, you're not trying to build $1 million in 5 years. You're just trying to close the gap. That's a fundamentally different mission, a doable mission, a mission you can actually accomplish. Fifth, get clear on your Social Security strategy. Don't just claim at 62 because that's the earliest you can. Don't just claim at 67 because that's what someone told you. Sit down, look at your actual numbers, look at your health and your work situation, and make a real decision. Because that single choice will shape the rest of your life more than almost anything else. And here's the thing. Most people are being told they are behind when they're not. Most people at 60 with no savings have more options than they think. They just need to stop measuring with the wrong ruler. Stop measuring yourself against everyone else. Stop feeling behind and start focusing on what truly gives you freedom. Numbers matter, but how you feel about those numbers, that matters just as much. I want to ask you something else. Have you ever felt like you were doing everything right, but still felt behind? You are not alone. Millions of people feel exactly the same way. The system was designed to make you feel that way. It rewards comparison. It rewards anxiety. It rewards chasing more. But when you understand the income floor concept, when you understand that retirement is about supporting a life, not hitting a number, the entire conversation changes. There's something else I want you to think about. Healthcare. This is the silent budget killer for a lot of retirees. Medicare kicks in at 65, but it doesn't cover everything. There are premiums, supplements, prescriptions, dental, vision, hearing. These costs creep, nudge, slowly raise themselves year over year. And if you don't plan for them, they can wreck even a solid income floor. So when you're calculating your real expenses, don't lowball healthcare. Build a buffer, build margin. Don't aim for just enough. Aim for enough plus breathing room. It's not pessimism, it's realism. And in this case, realism isn't negative, it's empowering. Because when you know what's coming, you can prepare. When you don't, you're at the mercy of every surprise. Let me ask you, have you ever calculated what your Social Security benefit is actually worth in real dollars? Most people never do. But think about it like this. If you're getting $2,000 a month from Social Security and you live for 20 years in retirement, that's nearly $500,000 in guaranteed income, adjusted for inflation, backed by the federal government, with survivor protection for your spouse. That's not nothing. That's an enormous asset, and it doesn't show up in any account balance. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. You just haven't been taught to see it that way. Here's a thought. If the system only rewards you with almost enough, you will spend your entire life chasing more. How does that make you feel? Tired, probably. Exhausted by the chase. But here's what I want you to understand. You can step off that treadmill. You can stop chasing. You can decide that enough is the goal, not more. And once you make that decision, your whole relationship with money changes. You stop comparing. You start defining. You stop measuring. You start choosing. If the system only rewards you with almost enough, you will spend your entire life chasing more. But if you understand your numbers, if you build your income, if you define your life on your terms, you don't chase anymore. You decide. And that's the shift from fear to clarity, from chasing to choosing, from not enough to enough. You don't need perfection to have a successful retirement. You don't need to get everything exactly right. What you need is awareness, clarity, and the willingness to face the real numbers so you can make real decisions. Because when you understand your income, when you understand your expenses, when you understand how your plan holds up over time, something changes. You feel more in control, more confident, more at ease. You stop avoiding statements. You stop dreading conversations. You stop carrying that weight that doesn't belong to you. Retirement at 60 with no savings is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a different story. One where you stop measuring success in piles and start measuring it in peace. One where you stop chasing benchmarks designed for someone else and start building a life designed for you. One where you stop feeling behind and start feeling clear. Because clarity is the real wealth. Clarity is what lets you sleep at night. Clarity is what lets you walk into your 60s and 70s with your shoulders back instead of hunched forward. You are not too late. You are not a failure. You are not behind. You are exactly where you are. And from this exact spot, you can build something that works. Not a fantasy. Not a billionaire retirement, something real, something steady, something yours. And if this video made you think differently about your retirement, subscribe. The next one goes even deeper.